Chad HD Show, News Talk KFYO. Let's go to the phones. And joining us right now, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz to discuss his campaign for re-election. Senator Cruz, welcome back. We were just talking about scooters and chicken fingers, so it's really good that you called us.
Chad, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, we appreciate it. Let's get this out of the way, I guess, early on. All the media is writing about how close this race is, and that this is a deadlocked race, that this is closer than it should be. Let me ask you this. Why is this race between you and Beto O'Rourke so close?
Well, this is an unusual time in politics. As a country, we're deeply polarized. The election of Donald Trump was a major turning point in the history of our country. And the reaction of the left to Trump's election is enormous anger and energy. The hard left is unified by fury and rage and, for many, hatred towards President Trump. And that is resulting in tens of millions of dollars flooding into the state of Texas. But it is also going to result in historic Democratic turnout in November. Now, here's the good news, Chad. This is Texas. And in Texas, there are a whole lot more conservatives than liberals. And so if we turn out common sense conservatives in Texas, we're going to be just fine in November. But we got to make sure people turn out, that they don't stay home. Our biggest danger in this race is complacency.
Do you think that's what is being reflected in the polls right now, is complacency?
Not necessarily, but it's worth noting that anger is dangerous. Anger politically is dangerous because it unifies and it motivates. So on the left, there may be a bunch of issues that divide them, but they're all united by hating Donald Trump. That's bringing them together. And the danger on our part, I don't think it's likely that a bunch of Texas conservatives are suddenly going to wake up and vote Democrat. I don't think that's likely.
Right.
The danger is, with the economy booming, things going well, that people are just focused on other things. You're focused on your job and going to church and raising your kids and going to the ball game, and you just don't make it out to vote. Or, one small slice of the electorate is unhappy about one thing, another slice is unhappy about another thing, and you just need 1% here and 1% there, and suddenly you see a race contested. It's worth noting, in 2016, Donald Trump carried Texas by just over 8 points. That is the identical margin that he won Ohio by. Nobody thinks of Ohio as this bright red, unshakably Republican state. And the margin in Texas was the same. So Texas as a whole has been tightening, number one. Number two, the left is energized right now. And then number three, the money differential. National liberals, Beto O'Rourke is running so far left, like a Bernie Sanders, like an Elizabeth Warren, that he has become the cause celeb of Hollywood celebrities and national liberals. And all of that money flooding into the state, you have to take that very seriously as well.
So how do you combat that? And how do you fire up conservatives and Republicans to actually show up and vote?
Well, you focus on the issues that matter. You focus on substance. So I am barnstorming the state. In the last 2 weeks, I've done 19 town halls all over the state of Texas. We've been in East Texas. We've been in the Panhandle. We've been in West Texas. We've been in North Texas. We've been in the Hill Country. We've been down on the Gulf Coast. And we're relying on the grassroots. As you know, my strength has always been the grassroots. That's how I got elected 6 years ago, with thousands upon thousands of grassroots activists. And we're energizing the grassroots. And we're also focusing on the ideas, the policies that Beto O'Rourke supports. His record, they're radically out of touch with the people of Texas. So on taxes, he supports higher taxes. I've led the effort to cut taxes. On regulations, he supports higher regulations. I've led the efforts to cut job-killing regulations. On Obamacare, he supports Obamacare and wants to expand it into full-on socialized medicine. I've led the effort to repeal the disaster that is Obamacare. On immigration, Beto O'Rourke supports open borders and sanctuary cities. He says he's, quote, open to, these are his words, open to abolishing ICE. That's a radical and extreme view. On the other side, I've led the effort in the Senate to secure the border and keep our country safe and secure. So there's a huge, huge difference. Actually, Beto O'Rourke is the only Democratic Senate nominee in the country to explicitly come out for impeaching Donald Trump. He is committed. He would vote yes today to impeach President Trump. That doesn't reflect where the people of Texas are. Texas doesn't want to see Washington turned into political chaos and destruction and just a partisan war zone for the next 2 years. But that's where Beto O'Rourke and the national liberal donors that are behind him, that's where they want to take this.
I have said, and we're visiting with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, I've said on this show, I've said in some of my YouTube videos, I don't believe that the majority of Texans and their policies align with Beto O'Rourke. I just don't see it. I don't see how the majority of Texans align with Beto O'Rourke. The problem is there's a disconnect, it seems, and I kind of this is almost the Obama phenomenon in a way, where the focus is not on his policies in the media and in many media stories. It's not on policies. It's on, hey, he's got a Whataburger. You know, he loves Whataburger and he skates. He does a lot of skateboarding in a Whataburger parking lot. That's the kind of the focus of the media, it seems. Would you agree or disagree?
I think that's exactly right. That the media, every 2 or 3 days, we see these glowing profiles. The national media are in love with him because he's a hardcore liberal. I mean, there's nothing the national media would like more than an Elizabeth Warren liberal representing the state of Texas. And so their strategy, they know the people of Texas don't agree with those left-wing policies. So instead they run these fuzzy profiles that are all rainbows and puppies, that talk about their favorite adjective for him is Kennedy-esque. And they talk about his hair, and they talk about his teeth. They talk about anything except his actual record and what he wants to do. So let's take issues that matter to West Texas. A lot of farmers, a lot of ranchers in West Texas. Ag matters a great deal. Well, Beto O'Rourke is a big supporter of the death tax. He's voted against repealing the death tax. I've led the efforts in the Senate to repeal the death tax, and as part of the tax bill we passed in December, we doubled the exemption from the death tax, which means now 2/3 of the farms and ranches that would have been pulled into the death tax and hammered under it are now totally exempt. Waters of the United States rule, the Obama administration's abusive effort to regulate every puddle, every drainage ditch on every farm and ranch in Texas. It was wrong. It was an abuse. I've led the effort against it. Beto O'Rourke supports it. He wants the EPA having that power over your farm and ranch. Let's take oil and gas. Oil and gas, hugely important. Millions of jobs in Texas depend directly or indirectly on oil and gas. I have been the leading defender of oil and gas and energy in the United States Senate. On the other hand, Beto O'Rourke has voted repeatedly in favor of carbon taxes, which would cost thousands of jobs. He's a big supporter of Obama's Paris climate deal, which would have cost thousands of jobs in Texas. And he voted in support of a $10 a barrel tax on oil for every barrel of oil produced in Texas. Now, let me ask you, who in your right mind, if you're a Texan, wants to do that to jobs in Texas? That's great if you're raising money in San Francisco. But that doesn't reflect where Texas is. And so if we vote our values, this election becomes, I think, a very straightforward proposition.
Visiting with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz about his reelection campaign, when are you two going to debate? When are you two going to get on a stage and talk about these issues?
Well, I invited him over a month ago to do 5 debates all over the state of Texas. That would have been the most debates ever in the history of a U.S. Senate race. Unfortunately, Beto declined. He didn't want to debate. He skipped. The first debate was supposed to be a couple of weeks ago in Dallas. He refused to show up. And I think the reason he's been really reluctant to debate is right now the media is protecting him. Right now he's getting no scrutiny about his radical voting record. He's getting no scrutiny about his extreme policy positions. They just run these fuzzy profiles. So I think he has been very, very reluctant to debate. That being said, we've been negotiating with them, and I think we will see debates very soon. I think we will see them. He doesn't want to do them, but I think we're going to see debates, and I think we owe it to the voters of Texas to lay out the differences in our records and the differences in our agenda and vision for the state of Texas.
Senator, when we come back, we've got some more issues to get into. I appreciate you joining us and also holding over to the next segment. I appreciate it. When we come back, more with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Chad HD Show News Talk, KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in, joining me on the phones. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, we're discussing his campaign for re-election. And, Senator, before I go much further, one of the questions that I get almost every single day from those who support you is, where can I get a Ted Cruz sign? They see, like, people are annoyed at all the Beto signs that they're seeing, and they want Ted Cruz signs. So how do they get any?
Well, there's a very easy answer to that. You can get a yard sign by going to our website. It's tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. You can order the yard sign, and it'll be shipped right to your house. And, there are a lot of Beto signs out there. I mean, I hear that. I see them all over the state. I'll tell you why there's so many signs. Because their campaign has spent $4 million on yard signs. This is the direct result of the tens of millions of dollars they're raising, is that when you've got liberals flooding the campaign with cash, one of the things they've invested in is they put $4 million into yard signs. And so on our end, put simply, we don't have $4 million to put into yard signs, and so we're relying on the grassroots instead. But any one of you can go to the website. You can get the yard sign at tedcruz.org. If you want to order a bunch of yard signs, you can order 10 or 25 or 50 or 100 or 500. But we're relying on the grassroots, and that's really the strength of our campaign.
Let's talk about some of the fundraising, because there have been some stories recently that have come out that some more Republican groups and Republican PACs are taking a look at this campaign and are maybe thinking about pulling money from other states, bringing it to Texas to help out your campaign. Is that something that you believe your campaign needs? And number two, former President George W. Bush is going to be holding some fundraisers, and there was kind of an issue that popped up with a few news stories around the state that said, hey, is there a reason why George W. Bush isn't raising money for Ted Cruz? Is this because you haven't asked him to? How does that work?
Well, in terms of the fundraising differential, there is a very real differential. This Texas Senate race is the most expensive Senate race in the country. And what we're seeing is that we're being dramatically outraised. So let's take last quarter. Last quarter, our campaign raised $4.6 million. That's a lot of money. $4.6 million is more than any other Republican senator. The problem is we raised $4.6 million. Beto O'Rourke's campaign raised $10.4 million. So more than twice as much, nearly 3 times as much. And what's happening, Chad, the dynamic that is happening is when Beto embraces some left-wing position, when he comes out as he did for impeaching Donald Trump, millions of dollars flood into the race from celebrities and liberals all over the country. When he comes out, as he did several weeks ago, strongly in support of NFL players taking a knee and protesting during the national anthem, Hollywood celebrities go crazy, millions of dollars floods in, and that's the cash we're seeing. So on our end, we're doing everything we can. I would encourage your listeners, go to the website, tedcruz.org, and make a contribution, because we need the resources to inform and mobilize and turn out freedom-loving Texans. As for President George W. Bush, I think very highly of him. I worked for him for many years, and we'll see if something happens with him or not. But, I can tell you, I met Heidi and I, we actually met working on the George W. Bush campaign in 2000. We were both on the full-time campaign team, and he's a great American and a great Texan, and we need to be all together, coming together to make sure that we defend the freedom and the low taxes and low regulations that are producing the economic boom we're seeing here in Texas.
So is this a case where y'all just haven't connected as far as a fundraiser goes? It may happen in the future, or is this a case where
we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't have anything to announce right now, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. Your opponent was on the Late Show. He had time to go on the Late Show, Stephen Colbert, and he talked about legalizing the Dreamers right now, today. Absolutely, make it 100% right now, and that we don't need a wall. What are your thoughts on what he said, and then what is your plan as far as immigration, what's going to happen on the southern border, and what's going to happen with the Dreamers and others who are caught up in all this?
Well, listen, on immigration, I've said many times that you can sum up my views in 4 words: legal, good, illegal, bad, which I think the vast majority of Texans agree with. That when it comes to illegal immigration, we need to do everything humanly possible to stop it. That means build the wall. That also means technology like infrared, like fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft. That means, critically, boots on the ground, tripling the U.S. Border Patrol. When you look at this race, there is no race in the country with a starker divide on immigration than the U.S. Senate race here in Texas. Let me give you the specifics. On my end, I am incredibly honored to have received the formal endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council. That is the union of the men and women who defend this nation every day and secure the border. And they typically don't get involved in politics. They typically don't make endorsements. They made an exception in this race. The union presidents from each sector along the Rio Grande, they all came to McAllen. They all formally endorsed me because they said out of 100 senators, the one who is consistently leading the fight to build the wall, to secure the border, to stand with the men and women of Border Patrol is Ted. On the other side, Beto O'Rourke, his record on immigration is truly radical. He opposes the wall. But not only that, he says we have too many border walls and fences already. He wants to tear down the border walls and fences that we already have. He supports sanctuary cities. He opposes Kate's Law. Kate's Law, actually, I'm the author of Kate's Law. Kate's Law would provide a mandatory minimum prison sentence for violent felon illegal aliens who are repeatedly deported. Kate's Law is a common-sense proposition supported by the overwhelming majority of Texans, not just Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, support Kate's Law. Beto O'Rourke has voted against it. And in fact, he has gone so far as to say that he is, quote, open to abolishing ICE. When he got pressed on that, he doubled down and he said, well, maybe we shouldn't just abolish ICE. Maybe we should abolish the entire Department of Homeland Security. Now, Chad, that is just a radical position. That's an extreme position. And indeed, he has come out for decriminalizing illegal immigration. He wants to make it not a crime to cross the border illegally. That is the very essence of open borders. Now, that is a proposition really, really popular when you're going on the Stephen Colbert Show. That's a proposition really, really popular when you're going on the Ellen DeGeneres Show, as Beto did last week. But that's not Texas. That's not what Texans want. We want the border secured, and at the same time, to welcome and celebrate legal immigrants. There's a right way to come to this country. You wait in line. You follow the rules. You come the way my father came from Cuba in 1957, coming here seeking the American dream, and I think that's where the vast majority of Texans are.
I want to ask you, this is a campaign question and also something that's happening right now in the Senate. It's about Judge Kavanaugh and whether or not he will be confirmed or not. I'm assuming, I have not asked your opponent this, but I'm assuming that he would vote against Judge Kavanaugh because it seems like all the Democrats are going to do that. Maybe there's going to be a handful that don't. But right now, do you think that with Dianne Feinstein kind of announcing this super secret letter yesterday, I want you to comment on that and whether or not you have any reservations on Judge Kavanaugh today. But do you think this is a circus by the Democrats, and do you think that your opponent would join in with this circus to discredit Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, I have no idea what is in this allegedly super secret letter. She has not shown it to me or to other members of the Judiciary Committee. And it's clearly a circus. We saw it last week at the confirmation hearing, where you had Democrats who had no meaningful substantive criticism of Judge Kavanaugh's actual record as one of the most respected Court of Appeals judges in the country. And so instead, they just put on theater performances. We saw protesters, which according to public reports were directly coordinated with Democratic senators to disrupt the hearing, to scream and yell and try to shut down the hearing. You know, the first day of the hearing, we had 70 people arrested as protesters just screaming and yelling during the hearing. And so I think in this context, it's a manifestation of what you and I were talking about at the beginning of the interview, which is the extreme anger and rage on the far left. And you're seeing Democratic senators trying to appease that angry left-wing base. And so I think this is the theatrics we've seen are all a part of that. But that being said, the confirmation hearings, I didn't think the Democrats landed a blow on him in the hearings, and I think he is on a path to being confirmed and on the Supreme Court, likely in early October.
Safe to assume that your opponent would oppose Judge Kavanaugh?
I think it is. I don't know that I have seen him say that explicitly, but it's hard to imagine any universe where he'd be anything other than a no, because he supports left-wing judicial activists like the kind that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama wanted. I mean, that's when Justice Kennedy retired earlier this summer, Beto O'Rourke tweeted out, "This Supreme Court vacancy raises the stakes on this U.S. Senate race." And you know, Chad, I retweeted him. I said, that's exactly right. And one of the major issues in the 2016 election is Justice Scalia had passed in February of 2016. It was the first time in decades that a Supreme Court seat was quite literally on the ballot for the American people. And if you think about it, that was a major issue that decided the election. Hillary Clinton promised left-wing judicial activists who would impose the political agenda she favors from the bench. She promised every justice she would appoint would vote to overturn the Heller decision, which upheld the individual right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. Foundational decision. I was privileged to play a big part in helping litigate Heller and win that victory for the Second Amendment. Hillary pledged every judge she'd appoint would vote to overturn it. She pledged to appoint judges who would overturn the Citizens United decision, which protects free speech and political speech. And on the flip side, Donald Trump promised to nominate principled constitutionalists who would defend the Constitution, defend the Bill of Rights, who would not legislate from the bench, but would protect our fundamental liberties, free speech, religious liberty, the Second Amendment, the 10th Amendment. The American people had the chance to make that choice. And went and voted and chose to go the path we're on. And so I've said before that I think Neil Gorsuch's nomination and Brett Kavanaugh's nomination, they have almost a super legitimacy because the American people as a whole, we had the chance to vote and make that decision, and we chose to go in the direction of defending our rights. Beto O'Rourke is with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. He wants to see judges that are liberal activists tearing down, opposing our free speech, opposing our religious liberty, opposing our Second Amendment. And I think that's not where the people of Texas are.
Senator Ted Cruz, I appreciate your time today, and we wish you the best of luck. Plug that website one more time where people can get more information.
The website is tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. Please come, get a yard sign, contribute, speak out, volunteer, and make sure and come out and vote. It's all about turnout, and thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Senator. Have a good one. That's U.S. Senator Ted Cruz on the Chad Hasty Show.